Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of CEO and Market Expert Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian. Most of you know me from X Triangle Investor. I am glad to host once again Troy Boisjoli, Atha Energy Chief Executive Officer. Troy, welcome. It is great to have you once again.
Hey, I really appreciate being back. I enjoyed our last interview.
Me too. Thank you. Troy, your company is one of the most active companies in the uranium space with constant news flow, which I consider a very good thing, of course. You and I last talked, I believe it was mid or end December, when you were at the beginning of acquisition of 92 Energy and Latitude Uranium. Now, a few months later, we have new Atha Energy, the biggest exploration company in the space. My first question, are you satisfied with all the aspects of the process? Is there anything more that should be done on that field?
On the acquisition front, yeah, very, very happy with how the process went. It closed as expected. It closed on time. And as a function of that, what we've been able to do is build the largest exploration company in the uranium space in terms of exposure to exploration property. And, importantly, with these transactions, it matured our asset base as well. So, part of the key acquisition strategy was looking at a large-scale exploration company and diversifying that exploration approach with more mature assets within that portfolio. And we did that with 92 Energy with the GMZ zone, which is a discovery along the eastern edge of the Athabasca Basin. And we certainly did that with LUR and acquiring the Angilak property, which has a 43.3 million pound resource at 0.69%, one of the highest grade resources outside of the Athabasca Basin. So yeah, we're very pleased with how it came together, and we truly believe we have a unique portfolio of projects and a unique company in terms of our size, our scale, our cash position, and our asset base.
Excellent. So the paperwork is over. It is time to put the boots on the ground. Your 2024 exploration outlook starts with Angilak project. Actually, we can call it your flagship project due to a most advanced status of the project. So Troy, walk me through the exploration work you plan to carry on Angilak.
I'll just summarize it with growth. What we look to do what we seek to do in 2024 is grow the footprint of the Lac 50 deposit. We believe there's significant expansion potential there. On strike, footwall, hanging wall. It's a series of stacked veins and echelon veins that are hosting the uranium mineralization, and at depth. Very little work has been done below about 350 meters, which when we're talking about depth is not that deep. So we intend to aggressively expand the current resource. And in addition to that, we're also going to be aggressively focusing on discovery at a property scale, at a project scale. You look outside of the Lac 50 deposit, and there's already a number of uranium occurrences, discoveries on that project, from the eastern side straight through to the western side of the project. And so our view is that the metal endowment there is high, the exploration maturity is low, which puts us in a very good position to be able to invest strongly in Angilak this year, and drive that project forward towards a material step change and a tipping point.
Excellent. So like you said, you have a very impressive 43.3 million pounds of U3O8 in historic resorts. But
That's right.
Yeah, but as we know, we have to take historic resources with a grain of salt. When do you believe you could do a resource update? I mean, take it to NI compliant category.
Yes, I've spent a lot of time building resources, looking at uranium resources, and the historic portion of Lac 50. To put it into context, the majority of that work was done between 2011 and 2013, which I consider very modern work, very modern geology, drilling, etc., assay results from accredited labs.
Yeah, it's not like it was in the 50s.
No. So, and as part of, as you can imagine, having a background in resource geology and geostats, went through that work with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm very satisfied with where it's at currently. But in terms of resource update, again, what we're planning to do this year is aggressively step out. We're looking at aggressive step outs within the footprint of the known deposit, not necessarily at an inferred or indicated drill spacing. We're looking at increasing size and scale in this program, and then in my view, you come back and you drill for confidence after that, as opposed to incrementally stepping out, which is, quite frankly, your more costly process within the resource development phase. So step one is expand. And that's what we're going to be focused on over this year. Obviously with a line of sight towards rapidly being able to, produce a resource off the back of that work.
Okay, let's look even more in the future. It's more a hypothetical question, but after you do this exploration work and another after that, would you say it would be realistic to see a PEA on Angilak in the next 3 years, let's say?
Yeah, I think that's very realistic. It's about, again, this year's expansion. We have success in expanding. We will come back and delineate. We'll continue to expand. In our view, you want to ensure that you're finding the edges of the system and fully capture the potential of the mineralized system, and then you start to wrap scoping level economics around it, and that is directly aligned with what our longer term view and strategy is at Angilak. We bought the project because we believe it's a real project, and we intend to exploit the potential that we see in the Angilak project, full stop, not just the Lac 50 deposit. We believe that there's strong potential for additional material discoveries on that project as well. But to your point, it's not just about drilling, it's about advancing a project forward in a material way, and that's part of the long-term strategy. Absolutely.
Okay. Will you use some new technology in exploration on Angilak? Let's say when it comes to artificial intelligence, can you use some modern techniques on the exploration at Angilak?
Yeah, we do have that ability, and we actually have that ability in-house, which is a unique aspect. We have an individual working for us that is a PhD level guy that completed a doctorate in machine learning, data science, and so that's one of our key tools in our toolbox. Is look, and really what it's about. People think about machine learning or AI as a bit of a black box, and really it is looking at multivariate relationships over data sets and being able to parameterize those to look at correlations that otherwise you couldn't see as an individual. And so it gets wrapped up as a bit of a black box thing, but really it's, in my view, it comes down to a foundational exploration approach, and it's just a tool to be able to exploit the data that you paid to acquire.
Yeah, definitely. What is the status for Gemini discovery at the moment?
Gemini, projects running in parallel. So we have Angilak that we've done the work to set it up to be able to start in early June, which we're really excited for. We mobbed in, did the initial mob in, that went very well, and so it's turnkey for early June. We're ready to go. In parallel to that, we're also working at Gemini. Over the course of the winter, we did a ground gravity survey, which is identifying proxies for alteration within that corridor. We released that in our last Gemini release, where we identified to the north a number of gravity lows coincident with mag lows, coincident with EM and conductivity, which starts to stack up to build up your high priority, high probability targets that you're looking for. In addition to that, we've also deployed ANT, which is ambient noise tomography, which is a survey that a number of people are talking about in the basin. And what that gives you is velocity data. So it's a pseudoseismic survey. It gives you velocity data that does a good job at resolving alteration or hydrothermal alteration within these systems. And again, you think about uranium deposits, and you have the uranium deposit itself, and then the broader halo outside of that is the hydrothermal alteration halo, and that's what we're targeting with the ANT system. And so you get, how does that tie into our overall strategy at Gemini? First stage would be the gravity survey, which is complete. Next stage is the ANT survey, which is ongoing. From there, further reducing the uncertainty with the targets that we have, and with the objective then of moving forward into, at this stage, about an 8,000 meter exploration program or diamond drilling program over the course of 2024, which is going to focus on two things. It's going to focus predictably on expanding the GMZ zone itself, which is unconstrained and not cut off. We have some very good views there based off of some up-to-date modeling that we've been doing since we acquired the project, that we really like the potential proximal to the existing mineralization. And then, the asymmetry in that project, the significant upside in that project, in our view, is testing the GMZ corridor, which I fully believe is analogous to the Rabbit Lake corridor, both in terms of the alteration, the geology, the structure, the mineralization, etc. And we're building up that pipeline of targets going to the north along that fertile corridor. And to summarize it, that's what GMZ is about this year. It's about de-risking the exploration targets moving forward, leveraging the asymmetry that we see in that project in terms of exploration upside, while at the same time expanding the known zone of mineralization.
Got it. What about, can you give me some approximate timeframes for the work mentioned?
Yeah, well, we anticipate having the results back from the ANT survey in early July. That will then be the trigger for starting to run drill programs in parallel. So expect us to be expanding LAC 50 and exploring at Angilak, mobbing drills into GMZ through the course of the summer, be drilling at GMZ and executing work at GMZ at the same time as we're expanding on Angilak. So, you mentioned that, off the start, that Atha had been a very busy company. That amount of work was setting the table or setting the stage, so to speak, for the actual work, for the boots on the ground, the execution, the investment into our exploration assets in 2024, and we're going to be doing that across the board.
That's great. What about the other Athabasca Basin projects? Which one will be your focus?
We have a number. We have a number of projects that are our focus. We like the North Rim projects. We like the Cable Bay projects. Okay, in the Passfield Lake area. When I say we like them, that comes through an assessment process, a rigorous assessment process that started with the largest ever multi-platform EM survey ever conducted in the basin, pulling our highest probability, highest priority targets and projects from there, and now continuing to build up a robust pipeline of exploration targets off that land position, based off of the work that we have planned this year. So you think about EM as a base case survey, then you add gravity, then you add in some instances ANT, and overlay geochemistry. We have been working over the past 9 months now in compiling a substantial geochemical database, both superficial and downhole from the Saskatchewan geologic surveys, assessment database. And so those are all tools that are coming together to prioritize and pull out the best areas and the best targets within the largest land position from the best uranium jurisdiction in the world. So we like that.
Yeah, you mentioned Cable Bay. That is particular. I'm interested to hear. Do you have any plans in the future to drill Cable Bay tenements in the near future?
In the near future, so this year's drilling right now is focused on the two projects that we talked about, with optionality going into the fall to add drill programs in certain areas. Cable Bay, the Passfield area, the projects we have in the Passfield area, highly interesting. Okay, the IsoEnergy completed an exploration program this year on their Hawk property. Their Hawk property, they ran an A&T survey, had very good results from that, followed it up with diamond drilling. That conductive corridor, that trend that they're drilling on, trends right onto our project in the area. We have modern geophysics back from there that we really like. We like the results that we're seeing from that project. You know, that's a tipping point for us to continue to invest there. We will invest in A&T, which worked well at Hawk over Passfield, and then continue to build up our portfolio of targets on that property. But at the same time, on the North Rim and in those areas, in the former Beaver Lodge District, etc., we're also advancing ground geophysics and have a robust geophysical plan for this year. And you think about the intention of that, okay, and how strategically we are executing exploration. And it's investing most heavily in our most advanced assets intuitively. But as we do so, continuing to invest strongly in our land base and in our project base and build up those high priority targets from a land package that has over 4 million acres within the Athabasca Basin. And so it's about ensuring that we always have a strong pipeline of targets and of exploration targets within our portfolio to be able to execute on, given the size and strength of our treasury.
Yeah, the Athabasca Basin is very popular exploration area, and the majority of people know about the Athabasca, which is normal due to a big discoveries there. But I personally see a hidden treasure more on the north, the Thelon Basin. The reason why I'm bullish on Thelon is the fact that it's very similar geology and it is very little explored so far. So I expect some good and big discoveries over there too. The interesting thing is that the Thelon Basin was actually part of the Athabasca at one time, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you full stop on that. From a 50,000 foot view, our view on the Thelon is that it is analogous to the Athabasca Basin, circa 1970. And the reason I say in that 1970 timeframe is that's when you had a shift from the Beaver Lodge camp on the northern edge of the Athabasca over to the eastern edge of the Athabasca, with first the discovery of the Rabbit Lake deposit in '68, followed by the Key Lake deposits in the early '70s. Okay, and that you think about the setup from on the Thelon, you have Kigavik, which is a Rano's project, which has reported around 130, just under 130 million pounds.
Yes.
On the edge, outside of the edge of the Thelon Basin, analogous to say Rabbit Lake or Key Lake. What hasn't happened in the Thelon is exploration has not carried undercover, and so you think about what that means from a geologic perspective, and what that means is that the high-grade unconformity associated uranium deposits that are the producers currently in the Athabasca Basin have not been tested for in the Thelon, and there are very clear structural trends that trend undercover, which we took and we have within our exploration portfolio that have never been tested, and so that's like never having tested in between Key Lake and Rabbit Lake on the eastern edge of the basin. So we really like it. We're really that's why we took such a bullish first mover position in the Thelon and acquired the scope and scale of exploration tenements that we did.
So it will be in your focus in the future, the Thelon Basin properties.
Yeah, it will be. We will advance exploration as we did in 2023 in the Athabasca. We will be advancing regional scale geophysical surveys as that first pass data layer to be able to help focus, prioritize in, and then it more square, it comes into focus in 2024 and comes more squarely into focus for us in 2025.
Okay. Troy, can you say more about the central mineral belt properties you have over there? What are you currently doing over there, and what is the plan going forward?
Yeah, so we completed a gravity survey. So LU in the LUR Atha transition, there was a gravity survey, airborne gravity survey completed over the large majority of that property. We're feeding that data into, again, we have some machine learning ML or call it advanced data processing expertise in-house. And right now what we're doing is going through a generative stage on that project where we're better defining the scope and scale of the exploration potential and the targets on that CMB property. We really like it. We believe that there's a significant amount of potential there. It's looking like multi-commodity potential. There's uranium, there's copper within that system as well. There's uranium copper correlations. It's not a typical Athabasca system. There's a magmatic component to it. You start to think about what that could mean, and the early thinking right now is the development of IOCG type targets within the CMB is something that we're exploring and that we're interested in. And at the same time, we have a very prominent neighbor in the area, and that very prominent neighbor is Paladin, that has the Michelin project. And you look at the opportunity for them to return back to Michelin, continue to do some work, look at expanding, etc. And what we're doing is getting that project to a stage that we're comfortable in making significant investment into it.
Mm-hmm. You have upside major developers with 10% carried interest on key parts of NexGen and IsoEnergy land, which is actively being explored. How do you see that cooperation going forward? Any room to expand it?
Yeah, so the carried interest area is fixed. It's fixed on it's fixed over, if you look at NexGen's portfolio, for instance, they have a very large land position along the southwest rim of the Athabasca Basin, which clearly has been very successful for them. We have a significant carried interest over SW1, a portion of SW2 and SW3. Now, they're at a stage when they've returned to exploration in a material way. I think they did 22,500 meters last year, and initially had announced plans for 30,000 meters this year. That initial announcement for 30,000 meters came before they had a new discovery 3.5 kilometers east of Arrow. So in terms of expansion of our carried interest, that's not really going to happen. But what is going to happen is exploration investment and exploration activity over top of an area, as signaled by NexGen, over top of an area that Atha has a carried interest in. And we really like that optionality, and we like what that optionality represents within our asset base. And we like the exposure. We like the exposure to NexGen and the investment that they're making in a very exciting part of the Athabasca Basin. The Southwest Athabasca Basin has been tremendously exciting over the last decade, where over 500 million pounds of uranium has been discovered along a 11-kilometer long corridor.
Mm-hmm. The next question I already asked you in our prior interview, but now after you close the transaction, I want to hear maybe something has changed. You have a multi-project development approach, which is great, but with the size of more than 8 million acres in the portfolio, you must take also a prospect generator approach here, since it is almost impossible to explore all that land. Am I right here?
Yeah, we were understandably quiet on that part of our strategy in Q1. And the reason for that is quite simple. We were closing a three-way transaction.
Yeah.
But as you say, our exploration strategy is about maximizing exploration exposure within one investment opportunity and maximizing the opportunity for discovery within the land package that we have built up. In order to do that, it's a timing thing as much as anything. We want to see as much work done across this land position as possible in 2024, in 2025, 2026, while we're still, in my view, squarely on the left side of a commodity cycle. And so in line with that strategy and view on the market and approach, yeah, we will be entertaining opportunities for third parties to get involved with our exploration land position through farm out agreements from our perspective, or earn-in agreements, from a counterparty's perspective. And in doing so, again, just the whole intention is to maximize the amount of exploration exposure in the uranium space in the Athabasca Basin.
Got it. I would like to touch on the exploration costs through jurisdiction you are and you will operate. You probably have done some rough math and have some rough numbers on all of them. We know that, for example, Central Mineral Belt is not that close and accessible as some of the Athabasca projects. Can you give me some color on the exploration costs throughout the jurisdictions you are operating?
Sure. I'd go from low to high. You'd say Athabasca being an accessible jurisdiction area would be, we're operators. We have a team of operators. We know what we're doing in the Athabasca Basin. We will attack our costs at every stage and keep them responsible and reasonable. And that's what we'll do in the basin. Expect those to come in as on par with other, experienced operators within the Athabasca Basin. Central Mineral Belt, we actually won't have boots on the ground, so to speak, throughout this course of this year. But then you talk about the Thelon Basin, and Angilak, and it's an interesting area to work in, because it becomes an opportunity to leverage economies of scale. And the vast majority of the high costs, or what people conventionally think of as a high cost in operating in a remote jurisdiction, is fixed costs. It's fixed cost, mobilization, logistics, etc. The way to start to attack that from a workflow perspective is spread more units of work over those fixed costs. And, in doing so, drive your cost per meter, your unit rate of work cost down. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we mobilized 2 new diamond drills that have high productivity factors, high productivity rates into Angilak. And based off our modeling, our per cost meter, our cost per meter basis at Angilak is trending, just above the Athabasca Basin, but only marginally above the Athabasca Basin. And so, I think if you look at these things critically as an operator, you have the ability to really manage the amount, how you were spending money appropriately, and getting maximizing the amount of return that you get on that investment.
Yeah. One question about the Athabasca. Your company is targeting all basin deposit models, but I am curious, and I know it's very early to talk about it, and it's not done before in the basin. Only Denison Mines is trying to do it. But do you believe that there is an ISR potential on any of your projects, nevertheless, in Athabasca or outside of Athabasca?
Yes. Yes is the answer. I think that what Denison has done is very interesting, right? Bringing the ISR model, which is a conventional uranium mine, well, in fact, the dominant uranium mining method globally, and applying it to the Athabasca Basin with the highest grade deposits. And what it's done is it has significantly changed the threshold in terms of the size and scale of a deposit required to move things forward. Historically, you think about the Athabasca Basin, and people say it's tier 1 deposits that move forward. I would argue that it's even it would be the tier 1 of the tier 1 deposits that would move forward in a real way. What ISR has done, and the ISR technology, and by extension to that, Orano, in partnership with Denison, is also developing the Sabre technology, with surface extraction technology. So surface extraction writ large, what it's done is it's changed the thresholds in terms of the size and scale and magnitude of deposit that is required to be able to move things forward. Then it comes down to a company's ability to execute. the ability to drive things forward, the people that are involved, the expertise that you have as an organization, et cetera. And we like that because we have a strong team. We've got a large land position, and the ability to aggressively drive things forward is what Atha was built for. So yeah, we like the idea of ISR.
That's great to hear. Definitely. Personally, I adore ISR mining. Troy, your cash position is around 60 million at the moment.
Yep.
Can you give me the plan for that money? How much is going in exploration, G&A, etc.? Can you give me some color on that?
Yeah, so we've got exploration, and we haven't fully disclosed this yet in terms of the amount of dollars, but I'll give you a range kind of in that 25 to $30 million range in exploration dollars. About 40% of that goes into Angilak, about 25 to 30% into GMZ, and the remaining geophysics target generative work investment in earlier stage projects makes up the bulk of that. From a G&A perspective, disciplined G&A, we're looking at about with the size of the company right now and the amount of work that we're deploying into the ground, less than 10% of our exploration costs in true G&A overhead, which is a metric that we're very focused on. You can envision a scenario where you have rapid growth through acquisition, and then all of a sudden, as a function of that, G&A starts to be reflective of that. Well, we were cognizant of that coming in and cognizant of making sure that, hey, we're an exploration stage company. Our dollars are going into the ground.
Okay, fair enough. I saw more than few insider buying on SEDI filings in the last couple of weeks. That is always good to see. Of course, my question is, of course, every CEO will say that his company is undervalued. But my question is, do you believe that Atha is undervalued at current market cap?
Yeah, across multiple metrics, I do. And you think about typically an acquirer, some downward pressure during the transition period, during the acquisition period, et cetera. I think we saw that coupled with a bit of a pullback. And, we were talking prior to the interview about the pullback in the uranium space. I think very healthy, a very healthy pullback. And I view it as an opportunity for people that were looking at the space and not convinced on the space, or thinking that, they may have missed something. This is a tremendous opportunity for people to get involved, and across the board. I think, I certainly point people to Atha. I think what we have going on is very unique. And I think that the opportunity within Atha is significant. And, through the investment that we're making this year, we believe that we will solidify the value in the transactions that we made through demonstrating the value in the assets that we acquired. And that's going to come very quickly and very aggressively under Atha. And importantly, we have the ability to continue to execute beyond our current plans, given the right success factors, given our balance sheet, given our scale. So yeah, no, I would agree with that statement. And I also think it's a tremendous time across the board for people to look at the uranium space. I truly believe we're at the early stages of this cycle. Right. You look at natural uranium cycles being driven by not thinly traded spot markets, but really term contract cycles. And we're not even into the term contract cycle yet. That term contract cycle starts to roll on in 2027, through 2030. So you contextualize that versus where we're at right now. Hence our strategy, hence being very aggressive.
Great. Troy, are you pursuing more project acquisitions, either by staking or buying a company or a company's project? What's your take on M&A for Atha Energy?
I'll maybe step back and just, overall, Atha was built as a growth vehicle for this cycle, for where we're at right now in the uranium space. Over the course of 2024 or 2023, we kicked off and executed the largest ever multi-platform EM survey in the basin. We move forward, we got into a deal to acquire 2 uranium companies. In parallel to that, we added 2.9 million acres of exploration property in the Thelon Basin. In parallel to that, we raised $23.5 million prior to year-end 2023, which secured our balance sheet. We uplisted from the CSE to the TSX-V. We closed the LUR transaction. We closed the 92 Energy transaction, and we announced exploration plans for 2024, which is a lot of work over the first year of a company's listing history, which was the 11th of April 2023, but our fundamentals remain the same. It's about growth, okay, and that growth comes in investing in the assets that we've acquired and that we've built. Comes through exposure to NexGen through a carried interest, but it also comes through looking at value accretive opportunities from a consolidation or an M&A perspective. Now, for us, like we are fully focused on right now on solidifying the value in these transactions through our exploration plans. But we also have a deep knowledge of the uranium space, and we'll continue. If there are value accretive opportunities, we will pursue them.
Okay. You had 2 new additions, or maybe even 3 new additions to your board. Who are those gentlemen, and what do they bring to Atha?
Yeah, so Richard Pierce, he was the chairman of 92 Energy, joins our board. Richard has a depth of board experience. You look at Richard's resume across the board, he has a significant depth of experience in the capital markets as an issuer, managing corporate governance, etc. But on the corporate side, I think he spent over a decade with Rio Tinto, and so he brings some technical horsepower as well, and some corporate horsepower. So very, very good addition, very strong addition. And then Phil Williams. Phil put together Consolidated Uranium through the acquisition merger with ISO, is the current CEO of IsoEnergy. By extension to that, when we were completing capital raise in December, the senior offering of that capital raise was acquired by ISO, 50% of it, and the other 50% was Mega Uranium, which is run by Richard Patricio, who is one of the founding members of NexGen, obviously chairman of ISO, etc. So a lot of very reputable people that I would summarize it and say people that I have a very high degree of respect for, that are either on the board supporting the company and within our management team. We were joined, since we last talked, we were joined by Cliff Revering. Cliff Revering probably isn't a name that a lot of people within the junior markets would recognize, because of the fact he's never worked with a junior company. He came up through Orano. Then he was with Cameco for a number of years. In fact, he was the chief geologist that brought Cigar Lake into production at Cameco. So you think of the profile at Atha, and right from a board level, right through a management level, deep uranium experience across early stage exploration, development stage projects, and producing assets. And that's the profile of the company. And what we're doing is we're building up an asset base that matches the profile of the team.
Okay, final question, Troy. Big money. Do you see more interest of big money entering not just your company? I mean, the companies in uranium space that are on a lower scale than NexGen, Cameco, or Kazatomprom. Do you see that big money coming in?
I do. I do, and we do. Yeah, and we've talked about. We have talked about our execution strategy and our thesis around the technical side of the business. Now, when I think about that from a capital markets perspective, you mentioned the producers that have performed very well, and then you go down into the development stage companies. NexGen's performance, and rightfully so, as being a leader in the field, has been exceptional. But you start to move down cap from that, and you get, you know, $1.5 billion below, you know, in that range, and it gets very thin, and it gets very thin until you get in the $100 million market cap range and below, where you have micro cap explorers. And you know what we're seeing and what we're anticipating is that money is going to start to rotate down cap. So taking wins, carving off a percentage of the wins out of, say, Cameco, out of NexGen, out of others, and rotate down cap. And when they're rotating down cap, looking for torque, looking for exploration torque and exposure to exploration and exploration potential. That was our view of what would happen and what is happening, and we feel it is. And so what we're positioning ourselves at Atha to be and to do is to be able to be that institutionally investable exploration company in that midstream, or in the mid-tier space within the, you know, uranium ecosphere.
Okay, Troy, thank you very much for this interview. I have one message for you. Go and find uranium.
What we intend to do.